Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Clouder quarterly client webinar. My name is Edward Wendling, and joined by a bevy of folks. I'm going to pass it over to Alexa Cade, Director of Client Success, in a moment, and she'll do all the intros. Before we get started, I just want to go through a little bit of housekeeping with you. I'm going to be your moderator for today, and we are going to take questions at the end of the presentation. Asking questions is very easy. On the right-hand side of your screen, you should see the GoToWebinar navigation pane and just find the question section. So you can pose questions there. We'll stop at the end to give you a chance to post them, but certainly feel free to send those through at any point during the presentation, and then we'll read those out at the end. Also, if you're new to GoToWebinar, you probably noticed the screen in front of you with our cameras. I want to just let you know that GoToWebinar viewer, you can manage it on your end. So at the top, you can see talking, my name, Edward Wendling, and then across it, there's the first drop down is everyone. You can change that if you want to just see, show who's speaking. And you can also resize the video screen if you need to. So you really have control over what you're viewing. We're going to keep the cameras on for the conference or for the webinar. Seems like that's kind of a better way to go these days. But we'll also be going through the presentation on the back end. So with that, let me just pass it over to Alexa Cade, and we'll be off.
Yeah, thanks, Edward, and thanks everyone for joining today. Most of you know me, so I won't bore you with an introduction to myself. More importantly, on your viewer today, we have Kim Chan, who is our senior client success manager. Also, for those that are familiar, Kelsey is on the line as well, who will help take some questions at the end. And our special guest today is John Litchfield of the American Baseball Coaches Association. John's been with the ABCA for the past 6 years. The ABCA has 13,000 members with more than 7,000 baseball coaches attending the annual convention this past January. So big group there. Prior to working with the ABCA, John worked in college athletics as an administrator for 12 years. So John has been in the athletic world for quite some time. John's actually going to go through a Q&A with Kim in a little bit. So we're really excited for that. But to start things out, Edward, let's talk a little bit about kind of what we're seeing in the industry. So for many of you who've been talking with myself or Kim or Kelsey, you probably heard us refer to the quarantine effect and just across the industry in general, you know, how apps are being utilized now more than ever. People are spending 20% more time in apps since COVID-19 started and the lockdown started. And specifically Facebook, we came across an industry study that Facebook released not too long ago with some really interesting statistics. So we've heard a lot of people saying, you know, well, everyone's tied to their computers now and everyone's remote, so they're sitting at their desks. And Facebook kind of just said, no, that's not actually the case. And also across generational statistics too. So Facebook saw that users 65 and older are the fastest growing group on Facebook connecting and using the application, which might surprise a lot of people. You know, we always talk about the mobile first generation being millennials or even the Gen Z group wanting to access things on their phones, but 65 and older are the fastest growing group on Facebook. 90% of Facebook's revenue now comes from mobile. So either accessing from the phone or from the application, but not the desktop version. And I think during the month of April, yeah, it was April, so kind of during the height of the pandemic, 78% of Facebook users worldwide solely relied on accessing Facebook from their phones. So again, you know, we're talking with all of you a lot about people aren't just tied to their desks. You know, if you think about your own habits, we're all probably binge watching a little bit more TV than we normally would, and not too far or not without a reach is my cell phone. So while I've got Netflix on in the background, I'm looking at my phone, I'm looking at different things and I'm scrolling through. So apps are definitely being used now more than ever. I think, you know, the important thing that we're trying to kind of focus on here is revenue loss. We know that with events being canceled and having to switch to virtual, there's definitely some concerns about how do I recoup some of that loss. So a couple of things that you can do with Clouder is in-app sponsorship and hosting virtual experiences. You've probably heard all of us say at some point, you know, Clouder isn't going to host your actual event, but it is absolutely set up to support all of the engagement that you're otherwise not getting because of having to go to virtual. So there's a lot of opportunities to engage through the app in that regard. When we're looking at in-app sponsorship specifically, there are several different ways to help use the app to recoup some revenue. So banner ads. We have 50 different locations in the app at the top and at the bottom of just about every single screen. So a lot of different opportunities for sponsorship through the banner ads. Splash screen placement. So right on the main splash screen, every time you open the app, you can work with us to put a logo on there. We have a number of clients that do this. FBI NAA is one, the Texas Restaurant Association is another. So it's a really good opportunity to have a sponsor that is front and center all of the time. Sponsored content as well, things like the little banner flag on a post. You can sponsor both text posts as well as video posts, and in that video post, a sponsor can include a message. Our partner ASI did a really great job with this using, what is the tool? I don't remember it off the top of my head. Sorry, Kelsey?
Gather Voices.
Yes, Gather Voices. So Gather Voices is a great tool that they used to capture sponsor messages and then post those to the news feed. Sponsored polls, you can work with the sponsor to collect some sort of information that they're looking to gauge from your membership. Sponsored polls is probably one of the easiest selling points. You know, you get to ask the membership something and then retrieve that information back. And then I think we have one more example here, which is sponsored push notifications. So you can work with your client success manager on the best way to handle this, but you can certainly position yourself as an organization, you know, sending push notifications on your sponsor's behalf, which is also an alerting tool, you know, directly to your members. So 5 different ways right there. And then there are a number of other ways too. So again, working with your client success manager to figure out the best ways for you, get creative with the app. There's a number of different opportunities, as well as, like, you know, virtual events. We can sponsor sessions and things like that. Speaking of events, you know, hosting virtual experiences. So, you know, contrary to what you think, it's possible. It's not possible to run an event solely through Zoom or a GoToWebinar or a Join.me or any of those kind of virtual platforms or communications tools. So something that Clouder can help with in supporting a virtual experience is, you know, Zoom might be your method of kind of working with the attendees. So kind of what we're doing right now, where you can have a panelist or you can have a moderator speaking, but again, you've got that phone right next to you. So I'm looking at my screen, but I'm engaging through my phone. I'm maybe asking questions. I'm quickly accessing information. I'm accessing presentations. So the Clouder impact is the engagement, whereas your Zoom or your GoToWebinar or whatever recording tool you use is really kind of how the end user, you know, receives the information. But once the Zoom meeting's over, engagement ends. So you really need to rely on that Clouder app or some sort of communications tool to make sure that you're keeping the conversation going. That's the important part, right? So after a virtual event, an in-person event, you know, people can network and they can talk. We don't have that right now. So being able to message, being able to set up a forum, being able to have a Q&A, it just makes it easier for your attendees to feel connected to you as an organization and to each other during this time. So the big question for a lot of people, and John might actually touch on this a little bit later too, is, you know, what are you doing with your fall events? And if you don't have a fall event, kind of looking at next year. We all watch the news. We all know what's going on in the world right now, and it's certainly an uncertain time. So the Clouder app is designed to offer that needed ongoing engagement, what I was just talking about, the ability to stay connected. There are a number of different ways to do that. Starting with the news feed, you know, you can enable at any time your user generated content. Again, you can work with your client success manager on how to best approach that, talking about rules of engagement, but allowing people to post photos of where they're watching from or how they're connecting. We've got some screenshots here. I mentioned Gather Voices. We don't have a partnership with them, and there are other tools like them out there, but We're seeing, ASI had great success in using that in capturing sponsor messages, attendee messages, and adding that personalized touch so people could upload their videos directly to the newsfeed. In the events, I've mentioned Q&A, and you've probably heard us all talk about Q&A. It's a little bit easier to manage when you're doing it through the actual app. And again, I'm looking at my screen and I'm typing on my phone. It's easier for the attendee as well. So having things like that, you can do auto approval, or you can do moderated if you're worried about the type of content that might be posted to the app. So there's great ways to engage there. And I think the last example that we have, actually, sorry, two more examples, forums. So you can do a forum for sessions, you can do one for the general event, but again, encouraging people to communicate, ask questions. The great thing about the forums is you can also upload attachments, so PDFs or images, or depending on what you want to achieve with that engagement, that conversation, or what you want to encourage. There are a lot of different opportunities in the forums to keep that conversation going. And then push notifications. So if you attended our last client exclusive webinar, or if you talked to me at all, I'm a big fan of push notifications. So are Kim and so are Kelsey. It's probably the one thing that I drive all of the time. It's probably the most important thing that you can do with your app, and the easiest thing. Send out push notifications, use emojis, make it fun. It allows attendees to not have to sift through email to understand what's happening next when they're trying to watch something on their screen and then, oh, I got to go over here, or I need to do this. So, the next session is happening, or we're looking forward to seeing you, or happy hour, as a lot of our clients are doing. So push notifications are a really big impact in helping attendees, kind of focus on where they need to be. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Kim now to get to the more exciting part of it. They're kind of going to touch on a lot of the things that I did and expand it more from the client view. So Kim, without, anything else on my side, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Alexa. As Alexa mentioned, I work with John at ABCA. He's a client of mine. He's the deputy executive director there, and he and I've been working together since they came on board with Clouder about a year ago. So John, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me.
So, as we've been talking about, things certainly haven't looked the way that we all thought they would this year. You all, though, were in an especially unique position. Springtime is typically your least busy time of year because your members are busy coaching baseball typically, and not attending a lot of events or anything like that. So, on top of having to shift the content you did have planned to virtual, you also had to, your members were coming to you for, looking to you all for, to keep sharp and to keep busy and sane, maybe when they're used to out being on the field. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'll actually clarify a little bit. We usually don't have much of any live events in the spring because it's just so hard to get the coaches all in one place and to pay attention to anything when they're busy with their teams. So we actually came out and we created a whole bunch of new content and pushed out a lot of content that we had that wasn't really available before because the coaches were looking to us. One thing I think I mentioned in our past conversations is our group of baseball coaches is very good about wanting to learn more and always be changing and evolving with the times. So we heard from those guys that a lot of their focus now was, since they had all this time on their hands, they couldn't recruit, they couldn't really be with their teams, they have no games, so they're trying to learn. And we obviously had a lot of stuff sort of in our arsenal anyway, where we had a lot of instructional videos. We have a resource center, which those are available through the app. You can see on our app, right on the bottom, there's a videos link that goes to our full-length instructional videos. We have a lot of other things that would just be going on in the news feed in general, where we're posting shorter things on a weekly basis just for them to consume. And so one of the big things that we did this spring was the ABCA at home virtual clinics, which were basically sort of a souped up Zoom call where we ran a variety of topics. You can see the one that's upcoming next week, which is the 12th and the final one that we're doing in this series, is regarding the diversity in baseball. But we've had a lot more position specific things, pitching, hitting, fielding type things that were in the series. So this one that's coming up is the 12th. So we actually ran them 11 weeks in a row previously and averaged about 1,500 unique viewers that got on live for those events. So that was very successful. Another thing that we did was we really amped up our podcast, which was coming out on a bi-weekly basis previously. The staff member that we have who runs that really stepped it up and just started pumping them out, and we actually released them 5 days a week for 5 weeks in a row, I think, just to give more content. And we've also got a really nice magazine called Inside Pitch Magazine, and this is something we were sort of thinking about working on anyway, was how to best sort of digitize that archive so that our members could go in and read all the past magazines. So we amped that up and released every past issue of the magazine on our website, and also on our most recent update with the app. It's actually in our More section. There's a magazine button now that you can go in and read individual articles from the magazine, or pull up the full magazine and read it in a reader view. And if anybody's interested, I used, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, Publitas was the reader view that we used, which I researched those quite a bit, and that one was the best one that I could find, that where you could really control if people could share it or do different things, because for us, we're obviously a members association, and that's a member benefit. So we don't want people to just be able to send the magazine link to anybody they want. We want them to have to go to our website or app and log in and view it there. So that was a good one to sort of keep control of that. For the ABCA at home clinics, since we were anticipating it actually went on kind of longer than we thought it would originally. But we didn't think of it as a permanent thing, so we actually just put that out to the public. So it was on our website. You had to be on our website viewing it, but it was not behind a login or anything like that. Anybody could just click in the app and start watching, or on our website and just click play. So yeah, we just focused as a staff on just pushing out a lot more stuff to keep the coaches engaged, and it was very successful.
So using those channels that you had existing already and just kind of amping that up, plus then creating essentially from scratch 12 now will be 12 weekly webinars on pretty short notice. You all put that together. It couldn't have been easy, but I mean, it definitely sounds like it paid off. All the work you all did with the amount of participants you had, averaging 1,500 per week, is quite impressive. So, congrats on that. Both of these, the webinars, the ABCA at Home series and the podcast, they're both sponsored. Is that right?
Yeah, we did have a sponsor, Pocket Radar, that stepped up and sponsored the ABCA at Home series. And then the podcast, we've actually been doing the podcast for several years, and we've had a few sponsors come in and out on that. And we did have one just recently called Team Builder that is sponsoring the next couple months of podcast episodes at least, and may extend beyond that. So those were some nice sponsorship victories in this time.
Yeah.
We were obviously having, it's interesting with the app. I think we might be getting to this later, so I might be jumping ahead, but we put out the app and we're sort of getting potential sponsors used to what it was and seeing what our numbers could be and things like that. And I'm sure everybody in the association world who deals with sponsors knows that people are tightening their belts, and they're still engaged for the most part, but they're sort of waiting to see what happens with their businesses before they spend additional money. So it was nice to have these ones step up in this time.
Yeah, certainly. Sorry, Edward, I got a little ahead of myself with the sponsors. I do have a couple more questions on the ABCA at Home webinars, John. I know you all posted them in the news feed. How else did you leverage the app to support the webinars and the podcasts?
Basically, to make a long story short, with everything that we have. So as you can see in those screenshots, we had it in the news feed. We sent out push notifications right before they were starting, and some other periodic ones, like when we announced that we were doing the webinars in general. Obviously, it's on our website right there on the homepage. You can get into it every time. Social media, emailing. So when we first started it, we sent out a dedicated email saying to all of our members, and really anybody that was a past member, or anybody, just saying that we're doing this. And then we actually changed the date of our weekly email newsletter. We would typically be sending that out on Wednesdays, but we were running these on Tuesday nights. So we sent those out on Tuesdays instead, just so that people would get that reminder in their email on the day that it was going to happen, without having to email them extra times, because we're always very conscious that we can over email people. And then, of course, in social media, Facebook, whatever else, just anything we had in our arsenal, just to make sure that people were aware.
Yeah, definitely. I think I saw a few push notifications go out, once they were available to, before the event, once they were on the calendar, and then right before, to remind people. One thing that John's team does is they use emojis in their push notifications, which I personally find that's why I'm like specifically remembering even today now, John, all of the push notifications that you all have sent out. Was that something that was your idea, or?
Not me personally. We have another staff member who does most of our social media and everything, Zach, who
Yeah.
And he comes up with all those creative little things and tries to figure out what people are interested in.
Well, it's emojis if you're curious. So, yeah, that was great to see. Just the promotion that you guys did beforehand, and then after, making that available in the news feed, reminding people it's there, was really cool to see. And like I said, it sounds like it's all paid off with the amount of participation that you got and the exposure that you got for your sponsors, which is great to see.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add is when we first got the app, we were kind of hesitant to send push notifications, thinking that we'd annoy people too much. Haven't really noticed any of that. It's been fine, and I think, the more I thought about it, and I look on my phone, and I see how many things I get from CNN or whatever else ESPN and all these things that are going in there every hour. So I think people are just used to it at this point. So we're sending them a lot more now that we started doing it.
Yes, yeah, I've noticed that, which is great to see. We've said it before. I can see Kelsey and Alexa kind of cheering along with me. We've said it before, and we'll say it again. John, every client that we talk to has thought the same thing that you just said, and will continue to tell us the same thing when they first come on board, that they're nervous about sending push notifications. And no one has ever complained about it. It's how we all like to receive our news and updates. And it's the most digestible way for your users to really understand, why should I open up the app? What's in there for me? That sort of thing. So I'm glad to see that's paid off for you guys as well. As far as your app users, I mean, you all had a huge surge of members at the launch of your app in conjunction with your big annual meeting earlier this year. But now with events being canceled, I'm curious how the app promotion has adapted and shifted to kind of accommodate the space we're in now.
We've really, ever since we launched the Clouder app, we basically added it to almost everything that we do, including, obviously to get new members, or to get people to renew or pay attention, or whenever there's an action like that for their membership. We always have emails, of course. We have we use Informs for our emailing, which is really nice with the campaigns, and we also have a welcome campaign. So when somebody joins or renews their membership, they go into that welcome campaign. And in both of those, we have a dedicated email about the app that has screenshots and just sort of shows them what it is, encouraging them to download that and use it. We do allow people to log in if they're not a member. Not all of the features are available to them, but they can get in and sort of get a taste of it. And so we haven't really, I wouldn't say we've had to promote it a lot more, because we're already doing it a lot. Right in the footer of everything that we send out, whether it's our weekly newsletter or just a memo that we're sending out to our coaches. We have the download links for Apple and Android. So it's in there. And right now, our renewal campaign actually just started on July 1st. So we're right in the beginning of it. And we've had, so a lot of people are getting those welcome emails who are renewing. And for instance, we just had 18 people as of, an hour ago when I checked it, 18 people had logged in for the first time today. So it's just sort of ongoing. And we've had over 7,600 people log into the app successfully so far, which we're happy about.
Yeah, you all have been super successful. I think that's important to note, is that, because you already had all of this promotion in place, it's already been a part of your emails. You had it as a part of the welcome packets and welcome messages to your new members, that you didn't really have to adjust that much when it comes to promoting. I think that just making it a part of your everyday communication has been a big contribution to what's made you all so successful, and including those download links. Most people, as we know, and kind of as Alexa had mentioned, are opening things, including their email app, on their phone. So those links make it super easy for people who aren't already in the app to just click and download. So it's great to see you guys including that as well.
Yeah, as it was mentioned before, we got a lot of engagement around our convention, and Kelsey actually joined us in our registration area in person to help people download it and get logged in. And obviously we use IMIS for our association management software, and it's always a huge challenge just to get people to remember their username and password and things like that. So she was there on hand helping people reset that and get it going. And it's interesting, when I went on site, I thought it would be a lot easier than it actually is, because a lot of these people that come up to you might not even know their iTunes store password or anything like that. Or, it's like there were a few people that I tried to help who were in the older generation that were like, as soon as I saw what email they were logged in to their iTunes store, it was like, I know that you don't work there anymore, so we're not going to be able to get this figured out easily.
Yeah. Making things as easy as possible for people who don't necessarily, download a ton of new apps every day is I think huge. So that's definitely where those links come in, because that'll take them right to, they don't have to search anything. They don't have to find even the iTunes store, the App Store on their phone. It'll just open it up for them.
And that was a very, very small number of people that were like what I just described. Most of them are used to downloading apps and just could get it.
Sure. Yeah. But those links take all of that out of the equation. So it's great to see you guys leveraging those. And I think another thing that you mentioned, capturing new members is super important too, since that's when likely people are going to be at the height of their engagement. They're really looking to you to set the tone for what your organization has to offer them, and where to look for updates from you. So I think that's huge what you guys are doing, and promoting the app right from the get-go.
Yeah, there's no doubt. When they register for their membership or register for an event, that's when they're really in tune.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to your forums, I mean, that's been a massive success. It took off pretty quickly. What are you all doing to drive the ongoing conversations there, and how did you get them started?
Yeah, the short answer is not much. The coaches kind of just found them and started posting in there on their own. We do have a staff member who I asked to check it at least every day and sort of make sure that if somebody goes in and asks a question or posts something, that they don't get zero responses, that somebody answers the question, or he might just answer the question or point them towards some existing resources that we have, if it's instructional videos or an article or something like that. But for the most part, people, every time I look in there, there's usually several responses to whatever people are posting. And we really haven't had to do a whole lot. They just sort of go in there and find it. One thing that I will say is in sports in general, the ruler for online communication is Twitter, and our coaches are like very in tune with like posting a lot on Twitter, and so there's still a lot of that going on, but they're in the forums doing that stuff in our forums too.
Yeah, I think the forums kind of allow for more of a conversation and opens it up, to a larger group of your members. Whereas Twitter, you have the DMs and then you have your public-facing profile. But what makes the forums a little bit different is, they know that that's all an ABCA group, which is cool. Two things to what you said. First, John, I think that the fact that it did get up and running pretty easily, forums kind of shows how people are looking to mobile to connect, with each other, that their natural place to go is on their phones to, to reach out to other members and learn more from other coaches about what they're doing that works. So that's great. But second, I don't know if you're giving yourself enough credit. I know that your team was super thoughtful in choosing those forum categories. You chose categories that were broad enough to be able to host multiple conversations and have multiple threads going at the same time, but clear enough that your members knew what to do. They knew what you were looking for. They knew where to post what type of questions. So you should give yourself a little bit more credit for getting those to where they are.
Yeah, usually.
I've noticed the staff in the forums pointing, they're very quick in answering questions and sometimes even posting questions and advice of their own, but also pointing your members to other app features, which is pretty cool, such as the resources that you all call it your document center. How are you all managing forums? You mentioned there's one person, I think, who's responsible for logging in. Do you guys typically seed with questions? Are you just checking in daily? What's that look like?
Just sort of monitoring what's going on, but as far as, when I think of the word moderating, which I think has been thrown around, that's sort of like if something inappropriate is happening, and there's not a whole lot. There hasn't really been much of anything that needed to be moderated in any way.
Yeah,
so
I think that's
sort of runs
another
itself.
That sometimes people are a little bit apprehensive of opening up conversations for all of their app users or their members to connect with each other, is that almost fear that there is going to be something that's inappropriate or people are going to run wild. So it's good to hear that we haven't really had to worry about that too much.
It runs a lot more wild on Twitter than it does in our forums. I have to tell you that.
It's a different vibe probably on Twitter than in the ABCA app. Speaking more broadly as far as content, how do you all manage loading content into the app? Is it one dedicated person who owns all pieces, or is different staff responsible for different places?
Yeah, we have two staff members. JR is a former coach, and he does he's actually the person who ran all of those ABCA at home Zoom clinics, virtual clinics, and then he also spends a great deal of time going through instructional videos that we have and taking pieces out and putting them into our resource center, and then doing accompanying news feed posts that show people that there's something new in the resource center. And he also manages those documents in general. So a lot of them were ones that he had as a coach that he just sort of made into ABCA documents and made them available. They might have been charts that coaches can use for whatever they want in baseball. So we were just sort of providing things so that they didn't have to make their own. They could just download these and use them.
That's great.
And then we also solicit, we solicit from our members just contributions. So people send things in, and JR kind of evaluates those and sees if they're of merit, and if they are, puts them in, and we put those people's name on, make sure that their name is on the document saying, contributed by so-and-so, so that they get credit. And there hasn't been a whole huge amount of that, but some coaches do it, and it's nice, and something that we hope can sort of help just generate more in the future. And then we have another staff member, Zach, who he's pretty on top of like the news and putting out press releases and doing things like that. And so, we have several staff members that contribute to all of that stuff, but Zach will be the one that'll really make sure that anything that's coming out gets put into the news feed, and he does those the push notifications and all that stuff. So we have quite a few. We have 4 or 5 staff members who are doing something in the app.
Yeah, it's great that you can get some help from your members too to keep the content fresh in there. What is your process for repurposing content for your website versus social media versus email versus the app?
Good question. I mean, if it's something that's promotional or news, we pretty much will put that out everywhere. Whether it's if it's just a news thing that we're trying to put in front of the coaches, we'll put it on social media. It'll be on the website, of course, and we'll sort of link back to that everywhere, and make sure that it's in the app news feed also. If it's more like instructional type thing. Like the magazine is a good example. So we do this magazine, and then after the magazine, like it's an actual print magazine that we mail out to every member. It's part of their membership. And so we sort of time it when basically once our staff starts getting the magazine in the mail, we know that other people are starting to get the magazine in the mail. So then we have 2 staff members, Zach and Sarah, who will, they'll work on basically taking those articles out of the magazine and making pages out of them, like just article web pages. And we'll post those in the app yeah, well, they get posted on our website first, of course, and then people can find them in the app on the magazine tab. We'll typically post them on Twitter with a link, and then include those in our weekly newsletter, just whatever has been posted in that past week. And then when it seems like most people have pretty much gotten the magazine in the mail, we'll post the actual full magazine that people can download, because we want to, right? Obviously, it's a cost to send that out. And we know that not everybody is checking all of our electronic things all the time, so it's really nice. I really like to have that print piece because it reminds people that haven't interacted with us for a while that you're a member of this, and here you go. It's with ABCA's here. But we also don't want to post that magazine electronically too early so that when they get it in the mail, they already read it. And
Yeah.
And so that's a good example where we just sort of take pieces of that. The work has been done creating the articles, and we actually do get a lot of contributions from members for the magazine. A good amount of the stuff in the magazine is just contributed all on a volunteer basis by coaches.
That's great. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's an important note is, reaching your members across all of these different channels. Some of them may only check the app, some of them may only check email, things like that. So just, having that same message and that valuable content available, across channels is super important. How have you all, kind of moving on to sponsors, how have you all highlighted those sponsors in the app? I know we touched a little bit on this at the beginning of our call.
As you can see in the screenshots, we use those sponsor tags on the news feed. For the ABCA at Home series specifically, the sponsor Pocket Radar was actually built into the graphic set, so it's always on the screen when people are watching. And anything that we put out would say, it's the ABCA at Home virtual clinic this Tuesday presented by Pocket Radar, just in the text. Everything is linked back to them, and anywhere that's linkable, of course. It's not on the video, but if it's in the text of it, we would put the link back to Pocket Radar's preferred link that they would like. In the podcast, of course, it's similar where that sponsor team builder gets a read right at the beginning of the podcast. We make sure it's short so that it doesn't make people lose interest before they even get into the content of the podcast. And I think everybody knows, including the sponsors, they don't want that to happen either. And then so basically anywhere that we're putting out the podcast, it would say presented by Team Builder, and just to make sure they're basically that's part of the promotional value as well, not just the read in the podcast. Anywhere that we put out the podcast, it's going to say it's presented by Team Builder, so they're getting all those little things. Whether it's in our email newsletter, we have a blurb saying this is this week's podcast. It would say Team Builder right in there too. Just anywhere that it goes out.
That's great. And you all also, I believe, have a menu item in your app that's dedicated to a sponsor. Is that right? It leads to their website. Yeah,
that's right. There's a sponsor called Rapsodo. They do. They're a technology company that does all sorts of apps and devices, and they're pretty popular right now. They actually came out with a certification, so you can get Rapsodo certified to, I guess, show people that you know how to use it. And that was part of their renewal agreement this year, was that they wanted that presence right there that people could click in, and it just goes straight to their website to that certification area.
Yeah, I think making it one of your, it's obviously a pretty big piece of real estate within your app, but making it tie into the menu so that it truly looks like part of the ABCA family. And just a feature in the app is that sponsor certification. I think probably goes a long way with your members and with the sponsor.
Yeah, I don't know what feedback we've gotten on that so far, honestly, but that was something that they were very interested in when their renewal came up. And obviously they're an app and technology company, so the app itself was, our app was very appealing to them.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. What else are you all doing in the app, leveraging in the app to increase revenue?
The big ROI piece that I was interested in from the beginning was just keeping the members engaged year round. And so that when it does come July 1st, and that's our renewal date, that, you know, our renewal period is July 1st to August 31st, and then they can still renew after that, of course, but it's just keeping them engaged so they can just press that profile button in the bottom and hit the renew link, and they're in. And a big challenge for us always has been just people remembering their username and password, just as about as big of a challenge as anything that we have. So we're hopeful that we can do everything through the app in a way that they generally stay logged in with their thumbprint or whatever, so they're just in getting our stuff, and they're that much closer to hitting that renewal. So,
Yeah,
so really on the membership renewal and event side, and then sponsorship, of course, we definitely want to get some sponsorship revenue from it too. But if we can just have a higher retention rate, that's worth a lot to us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, John, I know it's a super busy time for you all, and I really appreciate you taking the time to walk through, what's worked with ABCA. And one thing that I've noticed, kind of a theme that I've noticed in our conversation today, is how intertwined the app is with the programming that you all have going on and the engagement that you all have with your members. The app is certainly not an afterthought for your team, which I think is huge. It's not operating as its own separate piece of ABCA. It's like really intertwined, to what you all are doing and what you're offering your members. Less than 1 year since you guys launched, your members clearly know from the get-go, and members who have been around for a long time, that this is the go-to space, not only for the latest with your organization, but for them to connect with each other as well. So, I mean, it sounds like you have a great group of members who's super engaged, but none of that happens without your team's commitment to the app's success. And so hats off to you, John. And it's really a pleasure working with you and the ABCA team.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And the last thing I would add is, from the beginning, as we were sort of learning and thinking about getting a year-round app, I really view it as a really helpful container for things that we have. So for instance, if it's instructional videos, or it's the podcast, or it's the magazine, like, those aren't done by the app, but the app is a great place to just come and access all of those things easily.
Yeah.
And anything else that we have. So I just look for it as this container, this one-stop shop where people can come and say, okay, I want to access whatever the ABCA has, and it's going to be in the app someplace.
Yeah, that's spot on. So thank you, John, for sharing that and for being with us here today. As Clowder clients, everybody else on the call, you all know that you have access to our arsenal of best practices and examples, a lot of which you'll see the ABCA's name on, all scattered throughout that, because as we've heard, they're doing a great job. Plus now, of course, these client-only webinars. But of course, don't forget there are even more resources available on clowder.com, such as our dedicated COVID-19 page. This is the space that we're keeping updated with our tips and ideas on how to leverage mobile in this world that we're all living in today. And, all of this is based on our experience in the mobile industry, plus research like what Alexa shared at the beginning of the call. So be sure to check that out. With that, Edward, I think that we're ready to move on to Q&A.
Awesome. Okay, great job, Kim, and super impressive job, John. In fact, one of the questions that came through wasn't a question, but just a comment that said really impressive from another client. So first question I've got for you, John, is how does ABCA, well, actually, let me stop there. Before I do that, if you are joining the webinar after the opening, let me just remind everybody that we're taking Q&A. We'd love to have your questions. This is a great chance for you to ask another one of your fellow clients any question, and as well as the Clowder Client Success Team. Just use the question panel on the GoToWebinar pane, which is on the right-hand side. And with that, John, first question is, how does ABCA decide what the best forum categories are for their members, and how often are new ones added?
Good question. In baseball, if you're a baseball fan, you sort of, and you think of what a baseball coach would do or care about. Typically, they have different specialties, whether it's I'm a hitting coach, I'm a pitching coach, I'm an expert at outfield, I'm an expert at infield or catching. And so when we have our different content, for instance, in our instructional videos that we have, those are the categories that we're already using. So it was very easy to sort of see what those should be, and it's very easy for the coaches to understand what those should be also. And we have hardly updated those at all since we launched the app. The coaches pretty much just know which ones to go. So I don't know if that's very helpful, but we sort of had an easy template to follow anyway.
Next question for you, John, kind of related to this, I think, is the question is there a formal meeting process to keep all of this coordinated?
No, we don't have a formal meeting process. We've got a pretty good, we've got a really good team, and we've had a lot of continuity with our team here on the staff, I mean. And so people just sort of gravitated, once we got the app, people sort of gravitated to what falls into their area. And so it's not like we're meeting on a regular basis saying this should be in the app or this shouldn't be in the app. Everyone just sort of, well, honestly, we just put just about everything that we do goes into the app, so we don't really have to meet about it that much.
Sort of a follow-up to that, do you have one person who's like the point person responsible for that for content in the app, though, correct?
We have two people. I would say that's more of a two-headed monster. It's one person that creates a lot of content and will put it into the app, and then another person who really oversees making sure that all of our different things are promoted everywhere, and he'll put that type of stuff into the app. So it's two people for the most part.
Next question, also kind of I think related to that as well, is just how many employees or what's your staff size in general?
We have 9 total staff members, and 5 or 6 will touch the app in some way on a regular basis.
Wow, so 9 total. That is pretty impressive. Next question for you, and this may also be for the Clouder team too, is can you tailor who gets certain messages? Renewal notifications, for example, can those go to a specific set of users? Alexa and team, I think maybe this is like a group, subgroup question.
Yeah, I can start. Absolutely. It's something that you would work with your client success manager on. There are kind of 2 ways to handle it. There's a manual component, or there could be some sort of integrated component that does require a development cycle and would be planned in a quarterly update, but we can support both just depending on kind of the workload that you have or the time that you have, so that you can really tailor and target both messages related to renewal or messages just related to content specific. So, maybe ABCA would do it to the pitching coaches. They would want to tailor a message to them. So yeah, absolutely.
Another question for you, John, is how long have you been using the app, and how long would you say it took for your internal team to get comfortable and smart about how to use it?
We launched, I think, September 15th last year. And really, once we were really close to launching and we could really understand how everything was going to work and envision it, it was pretty easy for our team. I would say right after that, it was very easy for our team to figure out what we were going to do. As far as putting content in the app and updating and things like that, it was very short learning curve from that standpoint.
So would you say like almost just sort of immediate, basically?
Yeah. Yep. Basically,
another question.
We went and tried to populate. I was gonna say when we launched, we just went and tried to populate the news feed, and a lot of the other pieces of it. For instance, I guess we just tried to make sure that every section of the app had something going on in it, and just went from there. But then every time, like I've said a couple times, basically everything that we do or put out is going to be in the app in some way. So it's just constantly getting updated. And it's been simple for our staff.
Next question for you, John, is what percentage of your members are app users?
We have 13,000 members, and I think we've had 7,600 log into the app. So whenever we, obviously everything's up in the air with people's in-person meetings this year, but we had a huge amount of download and logins leading up to our annual convention. I'd expect that to happen every year. So another surge coming around that time, which ours is in the first weekend of January.
So if my math is correct, it's like somewhere around 60%, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Next one is, this is a product question, Alexa, for you guys. It's like a roadmap question. Are targeted ads to subgroups on the roadmap?
Yes, they are.
Great.
That will actually be coming on kind of on a rolling basis, but it's actually in our next update, which will be in beta testing for our demo app late July, so in a couple weeks here, and then we'll start rolling that out to our clients across August and September.
Sounds great.
Yep, and another question, I'm not sure if I quite understand it, Alexa, but it's the one about time spent in the app.
Yeah, I think generally a lot of people just want to know from client to client how much staff time is spent in managing the app. I think it's something that was asked of Michelle on the last client webinar and something that is still kind of consistently asked. So maybe John, if you could touch on that, if you have kind of any sense of how it's planned in the day-to-day or on a week-to-week, just what that looks like.
Are you referring to our staff's time spent on the app?
Yes, yes.
Good question, but I don't think it's a whole lot. Everything's very quick to update and change, and some of it's sort of all of the web views are sort of getting done on their own. So we spend time on the content and creating. Our staff members are creating the podcast, creating the clipping the instructional videos, and doing things like that. But as far as putting them in the actual what's happening in the app, it's just a few minutes every time we do something.
Yep. Hey, John, this is Edward. Just speaking from a client perspective. So for the Clouder clients on the call, ASI, who's we make an AMS called IMIS, which John actually happens to use. But we also use the mobile app for our clients, and we call it ASI Connect. And we estimate that it's less than an hour per week. And our point person for the app is the same person who is our social media point person and our email marketer. So it kind of just, it just sort of fits into their, normal course of business. So certainly when we first started, that was kind of a concern of ours was, okay, how much time is this going to take? But it just is, it's not even really, we're probably like you, like we don't even think about it in terms of, well, how much time are they spending on it? It's just one of the other communication vehicles that we put information out on.
Yeah, that's right.
That may be the last question. So let me just, again, if you've got more questions, we're just about to the hour. So right on time. Great job, everybody. If you want to post a question, just use the question section of the GoToWebinar answer pane. And I'll give it a couple seconds to see if we get any more. And for those on the call, nobody's asked this yet, but you will get a recording of the webinar. We'll come to you via a GoToWebinar email a few hours after we close it down, so you'll get a copy of it as well. So I think that looks like the last question we have. So thanks, John. Thank you, Alexa and Kim and team. With that, we'll just go ahead and close out. Alexa, you want to say anything to end or?
No, I'm good. If you have any questions about this, just reach out to myself or your client success manager, Kim or Kelsey. We're here to support you. And if you want to brainstorm anything, just let us know.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, John, and everyone have a great afternoon.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Bye.